You ready? You ready? All right. Ladies and gentlemen, we're going to call this meeting to order of the Tennessee Wildlife Commission today, Friday, here at Buffalo Ridge. I'm going to ask our new commissioner, Haynes Torbett, to lead us in the invocation and the pledge.
Those who are gathered here today, we thank you for safe travels here. We ask for your blessing as people leave here and travel back home. Lord, I thank you for these commissioners, for all the staff at the TWRA. We just ask for your hand of protection over all of them as they do their duties. Lord, we thank you again for this wonderful day. We just ask that you would bless this time together. Give us your wisdom in making decisions. And may we honor you in all that we do. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you, Commissioner. Just want to welcome everybody here today. We have some visitors, some of whom are going to speak, and we'll talk about that later. But Fred Walker, Will Singleton, Chris Hearn, Clarence and Laura Dyes with the Trapper Association. Thank you all for being here. Gustav Pearson, Bill Kelly, William Flanagan, Troy Goldsby, and Melissa Williams. Thank you all so much for being here in attendance today. Again, welcome everybody to the commission meeting. Today's my first meeting, so thank you all for being here and tolerating that. But just want to thank the staff and the team for just great hospitality. We've had a really good day yesterday, new orientation for our new commissioners. Welcome aboard. Just a lot of information, and just want to thank all the hospitality of the staff and just a really good team effort. So thank you all so much. Having said that, Miss Mary, would you please call the roll?
Monty Blue.
Here.
Brad Box.
Here.
Stan Butt.
Here.
Greg Davenport.
Here.
Ford Little.
Here.
John McCarty.
Here.
Rosemary McElhenney.
Here.
Rhonda Moody.
Here.
Chip Saltzman.
Here.
Haynes Torbett.
Here.
Chris Devaney.
Here.
Chairman, we have a quorum.
Commissioners, you've been previously given the minutes. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed? Ayes have it. As we begin the new commission year, I want to take a moment for the record to let all the new commissioners and the current commissioner, or the commissioners, all the commissioners, introduce themselves. So I will start. I'm Chris Devaney, chair of the commission, and I represent District 4.
Greg Davenport, vice chairman. I'm a statewide commissioner.
Brad Box, Jackson, Tennessee, District 8.
Stan Butt, District 9, Columbia, Tennessee.
Haynes Torbett, Johnson City, Tennessee, District 1.
I'm Ford Little, Knoxville, Tennessee.
Monty Blue, Paris, Tennessee.
Sorry. Rhonda Moody, District 3.
Rosemary McElhenney, District 5.
John McCarty, I'm from Collierville, Tennessee.
Chip Saltzman, Nashville, Tennessee.
Thank you very much. And I've also asked the vice chairman, we've selected the committee members for this year, and I've asked Vice Chairman Greg Davenport to announce the committees.
Thank you, Chairman. It's my pleasure to announce on behalf of the chairman our committee appointments for 25-26. For Fisheries and Management Committee, we have Brad Box, Chair, John McCarty, Vice Chair, and members Monty Blue and Ford Little. For Budget Committee, we have Chip Saltzman, Chair, Haynes Torbett, Vice Chair, and members Rhonda Moody, Stan Butt, and myself. For Audit Committee, we have Chairman Stan Butt, Vice Chair Ford Little, and members Brad Box, Monty Ballou, and Haynes Torbett. For Wildlife, we have myself as Chair and members Brad Box, John McCarty, Rhonda Moody, and Rosemary McElhaney. For Boating and Law Enforcement Committee, we have Monty Ballou Chair, Ford Little Vice Chair, and members Chip Saltzman, Rosemary McElhaney, and myself. And then for Public and Legislative Relations Committee, we have Rhonda Moody Chair, Rosemary McElhaney Vice Chair, and Stan Butt, Chip Saltzman, John McCarty, and Haynes Torbett as committee members. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Vice Chairman. Just moving on, does the director have any announcements or words?
Yes, sir, I do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, members of the commission. I want to say congratulations first to our leadership for being selected to be in your leadership roles, and also congratulations to the new commissioners for your appointments. The governor's made some great selections, and we look forward to working with you all as an agency. And we're also looking forward to the energy and ideas and leadership that each of you are going to bring to the table. As we look to today's agenda, one of the most significant items that we'll be focusing on is the upcoming season setting process. This process is one of the cornerstones of what you do as a commission body, balancing tradition, opportunity, conservation, along with science and biology. Today's meeting is where we'll preview the proposed season frameworks, and then next month we'll come back together in Nashville for you to be able to vote on those proposals. I want to emphasize the amount of time and effort and expertise that goes into these proposals. Our staff spend countless hours all throughout the year gathering data, studying population trends, and working to ensure that we present you with informed information so that you can make a decision for the benefit of Tennessee's wildlife and those who enjoy it. They're also really the best at what they do. We're going to have an opportunity to recognize a couple of employees here in just a minute. We've got Damon, Hollis, and Montana Michelson and their families that have joined us. Thank you for the family members coming to support these folks. They're going to be recognized for some great work that they've done in partnership with the National Wild Turkey Federation. And then Montana will have some other recognitions. But we're very proud of our staff, the hard work that they do. And we also want to thank the National Wild Turkey Federation for a great partnership. Over many years, they've helped us acquire land and help restore turkeys to a huntable population that we get to enjoy. So thank you to these employees. Again, we'll be recognizing them here in just a second. We're also blessed in Tennessee. The commission has done great work since 1949. This commission body and the agency have worked hard together to bring species back. We've got many iconic game species that we all get to enjoy hunting. The eastern wild turkey, the white-tailed deer, the Rocky Mountain elk, and black bear. So thank you, Commission, for what you're doing, and you're going to get to make decisions on these today. And there's also a lot of small game species that we do a lot of habitat work for, that a lot of our small game hunters love to enjoy. I think most of us probably grew up rabbit and quail hunting, and those populations are actually doing pretty good. We're really working on quail pretty hard, and you all will get to make some decisions throughout the year to really benefit habitat for quail species. Our wildlife managers work hard to protect and conserve the habitats that these species rely on, and have brought you a strong package of season-setting proposals that you'll see here for your consideration. Encourage each of you. You've already spent a lot of hours. I just want to say thank you for that. I know our sportsmen and women probably don't realize all the time and effort that you put into this, but thank you to all those that have sent comments in during the comment period for the commissioners to consider. I know that they've spent hours looking at this. They vet these very well and spend a lot of time as they get these. If you email us or send that in on our link, we share those with the commissioners, and they've spent a lot of time. So thank you for your efforts reviewing those. And then after today, you'll have another comment period to be able to come back and comment on that. Joe and his team will cover that here in just a minute. I also want to take a minute. He's not with us today, but I want to congratulate Jeff Prater for his recent promotion to Region 4 Major in our law enforcement division. Jeff has nearly 24 years of dedicated service in conservation law enforcement. Jeff has consistently demonstrated exceptional leadership and steadfast commitment to protecting Tennessee's natural resources. Jeff, what he'll do in his new role is oversee law enforcement operations across 21 counties in East Tennessee and lead a team of 70 officers to ensure effective enforcement of wildlife laws, public safety on Tennessee's waterways, and continued conservation of the state's natural resources. I know Jeff's probably watching online, so congratulations, friend. Well-deserved, and Jeff will do a great job as Major in East Tennessee for us. With that, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to turn it back over to you, sir.
Thank you, Director. Do any of the commissioners have any announcements or other things to say? Okay, well, we'll move into the agenda. Having said that, I'll ask Joe Benedict to come to the podium for an award presentation.
Thank you. New microphones get you. Good morning, Commissioners. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's a great, beautiful day to be out here at Buffalo Ridge. And I think if we were up on the ridge behind us this morning, we'd have heard a slew of turkeys gobbling. And unfortunately, I was not there. I don't know if any of you were listening for gobblers this morning. But speaking of wild turkeys, I wanted to share an honor that one of our staff received, as the director mentioned, from a great partner, the National Wild Turkey Federation. They presented this award a couple of months ago at the convention that they had. And this is the Joe Kurz Excellence in Wildlife Management Award. This award recognizes a current state employee who does exceptional things to help wild turkey populations. The namesake of the award, Joe Kurz, is the former chief of the Georgia Department of Natural Resources. He was instrumental in the trap and transfer program of wild turkeys. And at a high level, that was essentially where states that had extra turkeys would trap them and provide them to other states to kind of fill in where turkeys had been and had been extirpated. He also played a vital role in wildlife management in general. So that is the namesake of this award. As the director mentioned, Damon Hollis was the winner of this. Damon loves turkeys, and that's not an uncommon thing for our staff. We have a lot of turkey enthusiasts. I'm one of them, but he's a forest manager, and so he doesn't have the direct impact that our turkey coordinator would or people on the ground. But in his forest management, he's always thinking about turkeys. He's always thinking about how to get sunlight on the ground, create some early successional habitat, provide for those turkeys in their nesting and their brood rearing, which is a critical component of the reproduction cycle of turkeys. He secured a grant of over $800,000 to do some timber stand improvement in woodlands over the last 3 years. He saved the agency about $500,000 with an innovative cottonwood tree removal timber sale. He's also a big mentor. He mentors his staff. He mentors other folks that work for us about how to manage timber with a wildlife focus. He was invited to serve on a wild turkey team. We have an internal turkey team that's led by Roger Shields, our turkey coordinator, with other staff from across the state to provide additional input and perspectives from the ground across the state. Again, he was invited to do that, and he's a big contributor. He also contributed, commissioners, you've heard us present on the wild turkey banding study that we've done. We've done, I think, 4 years of it. It's kind of wrapping up now. We wanted to know what the harvest rate of adult male turkeys is. We know how many are harvested. We want to know the rate of that. So we put bands on turkeys across the state, and we can analyze or come up with the harvest rate on turkeys from those bands. He went out of his way. Again, he's a forester, but he's on the landscape. He found some places where there was turkeys, put bait on the ground, so that we could capture these birds. So he went out of his way to do that, he and his crew, his staff. He also went out of his way. You'll hear us talk about it, and you have in the past, turkey poult count. So in the summer, when the broods are there, when they're little, medium-sized, and nearly full-grown, we'll count turkeys and number of poults with the hens. And he asked Roger a couple of years ago, where in the state do we have poor survey numbers? And so he took upon himself to go into those counties where there are a few reports or surveys to add some data for those pockets in the state. So I'm just going to read this last piece, and I'll ask Damon to come up now. For his outstanding love and dedicated efforts for the benefit of wild turkeys, Damon epitomizes the spirit of the Joe Kurz Excellence in Wildlife Management Award. Again, we thank our partners at NWTF for this recognition, and Damon for his hard work.
So thank you, Damon. And we're gonna we'll take some pictures. We're gonna take a lot of pictures after at the break. Colonel Grandstaff has an award presentation. I'll ask him to come to the podium now.
Thank you, Chairman Devaney, and welcome commissioners and the new commissioners. We're glad to have y'all. I have with me Lieutenant Colonel Hammond's with me up to help me with this today. So our Shikar Safari 2024 winner is Montana Michelson. Wildlife Officer Montana Michelson works in Region 2, District 21, which is in Sumner County, Tennessee. His leadership includes Lieutenant Eric Anderson, Captain Matt Bryan, who we have here today with us, and as Major Jeff Skelton, also here with us today. Officer Michelson grew up in Hendersonville, Tennessee, Sumner County. He went to high school at Pope John Paul II. He attended college at Tennessee Tech in Cookeville and graduated with a wildlife and fisheries degree in 2018. He was hired on in June 2019 and started his TWRA career in Houston County in Region 1. In 2020, he transferred closer to home into Montgomery County and is now back home as a Sumner County Wildlife Officer in Region 2. Montana is one of the officers that I personally call a Betsy Woods legacy officer. Miss Betsy Woods, who has since retired, she oversaw our boating Wear It program and oversaw the hiring of interns each year. We've got several officers and employees currently within the agency that were Wear It interns. Montana was chosen to do the internship during the summer of 2017 and 2018. He and his wife, Nicole, have been married for 5.5 years. She currently works as a nurse at Vanderbilt Pediatrics ER. They have a beautiful daughter, Logan, that is a little over a year old. And I don't know if many of you know this, but they're expecting a son in August. I was going to, next time I see Nicole, I was going to apologize to her. I didn't know this, but Montana got married on June 15th, 2019. He started the academy on his birthday 2 days later on June 17th. So I'm not sure if you had a formal honeymoon or not, but I'm going to apologize to her next time I see her. I didn't know that. Here's just a few things. There's a lot of things that Montana did this year. He's had one of the most amazing years as an officer. I've condensed it down, but I just want you to listen to kind of some of the things he's done. He works details with other officers to enforce fishing and paddle sport regulations at dams and rivers throughout the district. Montana not only works well with others in his district, but he also works part-time boating officers, works with the local law enforcement, works with EMA personnel, and Montana's team effort across agency lines was evident in February 2024 when he and other agency personnel were requested during the search for a missing autistic juvenile. He assisted on-scene command to deploy our officers and maintain communication throughout the 2-week event. Montana exhibited our agency's relevancy and worked tirelessly during the search. He worked multiple events during the past year, which focused on wildlife education and reached over 500 elementary age children. Additionally, Officer Michelson planned and participated in 4 school events, reaching 800 students, where he presented information on careers with TWRA. Officer Michelson worked the law enforcement booth at NWTF show, speaking to approximately 600 hunters. He assisted with 1 youth deer hunt in November. Furthermore, Officer Michelson taught multiple hunter and boater education classes in his county. He also provided information through TV interviews regarding the Operation Drywater campaign and the issues surrounding impaired boating. His positive attitude and constant smile are qualities every officer needs. Even when faced with negative news or outcomes, he can turn it into an opportunity to encourage those around him. Montana's positive outlook assists him when working difficult, on-time, consuming cases. He never gets down and displays and believes he can overcome a tough situation. Since coming to District 21, Montana has become an SSGT instructor and furthered his enforcement abilities through an advanced BUI detection class. Montana is one of the most reliable officers in District 21. Montana wrote a total of 154 citations and warnings and had 11 BUI arrests, 20 citation assists, and over 300 verbal warnings during this past year. Montana contributed a significant amount of time to big game and sport fish enforcement. He spent 551 hours checking 1,133 individuals. One case in particular, Montana was able to demonstrate his ability to bring multiple agencies together and accomplish a common goal with the Hendersonville Police Department. In this case, multiple deer and turkey mounts were matched to illegal harvest. The individual was also arrested and charged with felony drug possession, felony theft, as well as destruction of property. In addition to Montana's wildlife work, he takes pride in his boating efforts as well. Montana is responsible for one of the busiest lakes in the state and focuses on impaired boater detection. He dedicated 263 hours of lake patrols, checking 1,129 individuals, and Montana also worked 5 boating incidents, including 2 fatalities. Montana, this is the part that every officer in the state wants to achieve accolades, and Montana's done it all in 1 year, it seems like. And this is just over the past few months. Listen to this list. Montana has had an amazing year, recognized several times over the past few months. He was recognized at a Mothers Against Drunk Driver event for BUI arrest. He was chosen as the Tennessee Boating Officer of the Year. He was also selected for the Butch Potts Memorial Southeastern Regional Officer of the Year for NASBLA. He was also recognized by the Donaldson Chamber of Commerce as one of our local outstanding officers. He was chosen as the Region 2 Wildlife Officer of the Year. And most recently, he was chosen as the National Wild Turkey Officer of the Year for the state of Tennessee. He represented Tennessee at the National Convention held at Opryland Hotel back in February. So as you can see, he's had an exceptional year. I would like to read a message from Vice President of Shikar Safari Club International, Ricardo Longoria. Officer Michelson, congratulations on being chosen as the outstanding 2024 Wildlife Officer of the Year for Tennessee. To be selected the best in one's field by one's peers must be a most rewarding experience. Shikar Safari Club International joins your state officials and fellow wildlife officers in congratulating you as the well-deserved recipient of the 2024 Shikar Safari Club International Outstanding Wildlife Officer of the Year. Being selected for this prestigious award places you in a very distinguished group of officers nationwide who have achieved recognition because of their outstanding performance and dedication to duty. Our membership joins me in wishing you continued success in the conservation of one of our nation's most precious natural resources, our wildlife. TWA would also like to thank Shikar Safari for their continued support of law enforcement. They've supported Tennessee officers for at least 50 years. Bob Lowry Sr., the Smith County Warden for many years, and my personal hunter education instructor in 1983, is the first name on the wall in our office that received this award in 1974. Montana, your name will now join that list. Thank you for your family, your dedication to the agency, and the sportsmen and women of this state. Come on up, Montana. This is the Shikar Safari plate. This is the frame print for it. We also got his statewide recognition as Officer of the Year for NWTF also. And we'll get some photographs after this. One thing to notice on his shirt, he's got another pin coming. We got a pin for Shikar Safari. These 4 pins all came this year. He's got 5 pins this year. I don't know of another officer that's ever gotten that type of recognition, so congratulations.
Thank you, Colonel Grandstaff and Officer Michelson. Congratulations again, and we'll take some pictures after at our break. We're going to go now to Chief Benedict to go over the season setting preview. This is a preview, and the way we're going to do this, we're going to go through species, each species, probably take a break somewhere in there. And we're going to, between each species, we're going to ask the public if they want to come up and comment. So I will hand it over to Chief Benedict.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, folks, again. As the chairman said and as the director said, we're excited to bring you this preview of the hunting seasons that we're recommending for the next year. And also, as the director said, I want to just thank my staff for their efforts, including law enforcement and other folks that have provided input on this. I'm going to give a brief overview of the season setting process just to remind the members of the audience and new commissioners what sort of goes into this process. Mark McBride, my assistant chief for game species, he'll come up. He'll go through a couple proclamations. And then Wally Akins, our assistant chief over habitat, will come up for the wildlife management area proclamations. So just to go over the season setting process, we collect a lot of biological data during the hunting seasons, right? So these are deer check stations where we take measurements of antlers and other things. We get input from the public. This happens year round. Commissioners give us ideas that come through the executive team to the agency. We also do surveys, human dimension surveys. We ask the public what they think and what their harvest was like, et cetera. We look at those data, we compile those and analyze those. And then we begin the process of agency meetings. So different regions, different work groups, the species groups have multiple meetings over the course of the months to look at the data we collected, that we've analyzed, we've summarized, we think through it at a regional scale, a statewide scale, and then sometimes nationally. and we develop recommendations. And when we develop these recommendations, one thing we've moved to do is look at 3 or 5 year trends. It's real tempting, I guess you could say, to look at 1 year harvest from last year. So we compare last year's deer harvest to this year, and something was up or down by a little bit, and we say, oh, we should do something. But we know that populations fluctuate over time, and we look for patterns in that to see, are the regulations doing something different to harvest? And so we look again at 3 and 5 year recommendations. And when our team, the wildlife division, comes up with the recommendations, as well as law enforcement on the man or means teams, we have a directors panel, the director, the attorney, the deputy directors, myself, the colonel. We see these recommendations and preview that, and we kind of beat them up again, right, at a different level, right? The directors, deputy directors think nationally. There's other things that we do to put into there. So then today is the day we bring you those sort of final recommendations from the agency for your consideration. We present those today, and as the director said, in April, you guys will hear these again. They may be slightly modified, but usually they're about the same at the April meeting. And then you'll hear it first in the Wildlife Committee for a vote, and then at the full commission. After that, the work's still not done. And this has taken a good part of the year to do this process over time. And then the hunting guide, we've got to finish that after the April commission meeting to get that ready. Our communication folks help immensely with that. And then it goes to press, and it's available for the sportsmen and women on April 1st. So a little bit more detail about what's ahead for today. We'll be sharing several proclamations. Not all hunting season proclamations have to be heard every year. Some of those are set up so that we don't need to change them on an annual basis. So we'll give you the list of those that we'll be considering today in April. We'll give you a little idea of the public input that we received. Commissioners, I'm not sure if the new folks have this, new commissioners, but we can get that to you this afternoon. Commissioners, you received a packet of information from me that lists all the comments that we received. And we'll go through that a little bit later here. We're going to hear from Mark McBride about adaptive harvest management. And this commission and members of the public will remember the time we spent last year. There was 4 commission meetings where we talked through this. And really the 2 years before that, we engaged with the public, with the director's office. Our communication folks did a lot of survey work. We did a great job and really appreciate the public input, again, during that adaptive harvest management process that we now use for deer and turkeys. Again, we're going to preview the agency recommendations, just those proclamations that need to be changed. And then we'll have questions and answers from the commission at the end of that. And again, the commission action will occur in April. So the proclamations we'll consider or ask you guys to consider today are the big game hunting seasons. We'll see harvest summaries of all the big game species like we normally do. And we only have one proposed regulation change, and that's for bears. Then we'll go into the migratory game bird proclamation. As you all know, the federal government, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, sets a framework for migratory birds, and then we select our season within that framework. There's a few changes there that we need to make, and then adjust the calendar dates for this calendar year. We are excited to have 2 new public hunting areas this year. We're thankful for the Wolf River State Forest and Scotts Gulf State Park and the leadership in those organizations to work with us to set these areas up for hunting. And then as usual, within the WMA system, we have so many WMAs. There's some additional opportunity, increased bag limits, and some simplification and consistency work across those WMAs. And you'll see the footnote at the end. In the commission packet that y'all will receive before the April commission meeting, we will have each proclamation verbatim as it's written, and the changes that we propose will be in red. So we call it a red line proclamation. So you'll see every change that we recommend, whether it's a season date or a bag limit. And the footnote here is to remind me to tell you that sometimes we'll read a proclamation and we'll change one, and we'll realize that the WMA next to it has the same regulation, but it's worded poorly. So we'll do some clarification, some edits to the document that don't actually change the season. So you'll see those in that proclamation packet in April. So real quick, just want to go through the public comment. We have this email address that's been around for more than a decade. Folks can email us any time of the year. We hold those comments until we look at those each season. So we appreciate folks using that email. We also changed last year to have this input tool, we're calling it, where you'll see the number in a minute, but we get hundreds of comments each year, and it's tricky for our staff to look at an email that has 4 or 5 topics in there. And so we've got to sort them out and copy that email. So we want to make sure we do a really good job of listening to those comments. making sure our appropriate staff look at each of those topics. So we developed an online input tool where, when you go to this website, you click on, I want to make a comment about deer and waterfowl. And so we just guide you through that process. So on the end and kind of on the backside, when we pull that data down and compile it, we know that our waterfowl coordinator needs to get this one and the deer coordinator gets that one. So again, thanks to the folks, most of the input this year came from that tool. I want to thank folks for using that and kind of moving to this new system. Of course, commissioners, you share ideas with the directors, executive staff, and that trickles down to the wildlife and law enforcement divisions. Thank you for that input. That's been included in the processes that we use throughout this process. And again, after today's meeting, we're going to post this online input tool specifically for these recommendations that we provide, and we'll ask for the public to comment on those specifically using that online input tool. So again, I think this is the last slide I have before Mark comes up. We had almost 1,000 folks provide comments to us, and almost over 2,500 comments. So that's a good number of public comments that we received on a variety of topics. Some that we have changes for, and some that we don't. The staff reviewed all these, and again, I'll just reference the packet that you all had with an Excel spreadsheet with every comment that we received from the public, and then off to the side, there was a little summary there. It's hard to look at. I think there's 800 and something comments about deer. It's hard for our deer coordinator, or Mark and myself, Wally, to look through 800 comments and at the end of it, sit back and say, what did more people want? Was there some consensus here? Was there something that we are getting wrong or that we're missing? So we use some software to summarize that. It's kind of like an Amazon review that you might see if you're going to buy something in Amazon. It's just kind of a summary. And so you saw that in your packet as well. So here are the numbers. I won't go through them again. I referenced 800 deer comments. 390 small game fur bear. I think many of these were about coyote hunting at night, which the commission deliberated and passed that last year. Turkeys is another one that's really usually high up there with deer. Mandarin means, I think, again, many of those were this coyote hunting at night season that you all created last year. So with that, I'll turn it over to Mark. And as the chairman mentioned, there's two proclamations that Mark will go through. One is the big game proclamation. You'll hear turkey harvest, deer harvest, elk harvest, and then he'll quickly go to the migratory game birds, which is pretty short, and then we'll take comments about that. And based on what the chair said, we'll take a break at that point. So, yeah, this will be a long presentation. Again, we're trying to share all the information we have with you, kind of at a summary, high level, but there's just so much information we wanted to share. So, with that, I'll ask Assistant Chief Mark McBride to come up.
All right. Good morning, commissioners. As Joe said, I do have quite a few slides. I'm going to try and keep the pace pretty good, but hopefully we'll have some good, robust discussion at the end of this. So I'm going to start with just a kind of a high-level overview of the adaptive harvest management changes that we made last year as a reminder and information for the new commissioners. Then we'll roll through the species and wrap up with the change that we have to bears. So this was a big deal. This is one of the biggest things that the agencies, the wildlife division specifically, has done in a long time to bring new science and deer and turkey management into the future. And there's a lot of key components to this. I'm not going to break the process down like I have in the past. I just kind of want to hit a few high levels of kind of visible changes that commissioners you've probably seen and you're probably hearing from the public. So this was a long process. If you go back to the beginning of kind of when we started this, it's almost 5 years ago with the creation of our deer and turkey strategic management plans. And then we started involving the public. We had focus groups. We had multiple public meetings. We live streamed some of those meetings, put those up online, and invited people to be engaged in this process. So through that, we talked to a lot of people. We really tried to get at the general sentiment and overall feelings of hunters surrounding deer and turkeys. One of the most visible things that came out of this was the creation of new deer and turkey management units. And I bring that up just to mention that there was a very lengthy strategic process in creating those. It was very intentional. There was scientific modeling that was done to delineate units where the underlying environmental and biological factors that drive deer and turkey populations are the same. And that's intentional because, as you'll see, we kind of have this modeling process that we do at each unit level. And we want the underlying population dynamics of deer and turkey populations to be similar across those units. So when we're doing this model and trying to understand what's going on and monitoring the populations, as much stuff as possible that drive those populations is held constant. So because of that, we as a division are going to hold these management units static so we can really understand what's going on. Another thing that came out of this was actual objectives. We've never stated here's our explicit goals or objectives for deer and turkey management. We have that now, and every decision we make is geared towards meeting those objectives. And so those were driven by stakeholders. The focus groups helped us identify those, and we put those out to the public. And you'll see here, maintaining abundant and healthy populations was everyone's highest priority, like we thought it would be, and that's great. And that's fundamentally, every time we make a decision with hunting seasons, that's the highest objective, maintaining abundant and healthy populations. So kind of getting into the science part of it, we've got this structured modeling process at each unit that incorporates all this population data. So historically, we were kind of looking at harvest, trying to decipher what harvest trends might be telling us. And as Joe said, there's a lot of temptation to be reactive to changes in harvest. But more importantly, harvest doesn't necessarily tell us what's going on with the population. It's just a number at the end of the day. It's the number of animals that were removed by hunters. But there's a lot of factors that influence that harvest number, such as effort, that don't really get at what the underlying population is. So we've got this process now where we're kind of looking bigger picture at the populations and not just harvest, so we can understand hopefully what's going on. And so through this process, we're looking at these objectives and the populations, and we're selecting seasons saying, based on the population status, this is a season that will best meet those objectives that we have. And why did we do this? So this is really what I wanted to get across. First of all, it's a much more transparent process, right? If hunters ask, how did you end up at this season? We can walk them through all the science and data. This is exactly why we recommended this season. It hopefully will introduce some stability as well. You know, we're not caught in this pattern of chasing harvest. Harvest is going down. People are reacting. Maybe there's something going on with populations. And that can lead to, hey, we need to lower bag limits. Well, when you lower bag limits, there's potential for harvest to decline even more. So is it the population driving that lower harvest, or is it because you change bag limits? And it's hard to decipher between those things. One of the key goals of this process is to understand what role hunting has in these population fluctuations. There's a lot of things that drive populations, especially deer and turkey populations. Environmental factors. You could have a couple drought years. Turkey populations are going down because nesting's poor. What role does hunting play with that? Yeah, it's really important for us to understand as we're making these decisions for which hunting seasons to recommend. So at the end of the day, this iterative structured process really allows us to better monitor populations, and through that, increased monitoring, we're making better decisions, and ultimately we're learning. So I didn't get into the process too much, but part of this modeling, we're making predictions. Every year we're looking at all those different hunting seasons, different bag limits, different season lengths, and we're predicting what might happen to the population based on the current population status. And when we're making these predictions, after the season, we're going back and we're comparing our predictions to what actually happened. And that's kind of that iterative process that I talked about, of constantly comparing predictions to what actually happened. So for these next few years, we are not going to be making any recommendations for changes to deer and turkey populations. We'd like to get on a 3-year cycle because of making predictions, and we want to be able to kind of let things settle for a little bit. And I wanted to provide a simple analogy about why we're doing that. So I'm a big archery hunter. Hopefully we've got a lot of bow hunters here. Let's pretend you just bought a brand new bow. You're real excited. You're going to sight it in. You slap your sight on, you go out back with some arrows, and you take a shot. You shoot an arrow. This is like our predictions. This is our first prediction. What do you immediately do? Do you grab your Allen wrenches and go start moving that sight over? Probably not. You're going to take a few more shots to really understand where that group is, right? So you're going to shoot a few more times and say, okay, it's pretty clear. I'm definitely a little to the left of where I want to be. But there's a little bit of a spread up and down. I might want to move my target a little bit down and then shoot a few more times to see where that group is. And that's kind of the same thing that we're doing with this modeling process where we're making predictions. Deer and turkey populations are really complex. Things are always bouncing up and down. So we want to hold as much constant so we can really narrow in on where are our predictions landing versus where things actually are. So that's really important to speed up this learning process. If we're changing things a lot, it adds complexity and uncertainty to this whole process. So I'm going to start here with deer. We'll just run through kind of some harvest summary and some CWD information. And then I'll preview the season, what it will look like. We're not proposing any changes, but what this upcoming season will look like under that with no recommended changes. So deer harvest, you can see there is just shy of 168,000 this year. This was a really good bump. You can see the 5-year average. We're quite a bit above that. Interestingly, Dr. Adam Edge, our deer coordinator, said almost every single southeastern state experienced this. They saw a relatively good bump in their harvest. As I talked about earlier with harvest, there's a lot of things that can influence that. One thing that's been well established to influence harvest in deer is acorn production. On years when there's not a lot of acorns on the ground, deer have to move more. And when deer move more, they're more susceptible to harvest. So a lot of times you'll see this increase in harvest. So a lot of southeastern states saw this increase. The last few years, we've talked a lot about CWD and what the harvest and the former unit CWD has done. This is the 8 original counties over in Southwest Tennessee where CWD was discovered, and they've had some special hunting regulations. You can see it was discovered there in 2018. 2020 was a COVID year. That's another example of how external factors can influence harvest. People had a lot more time. You saw a lot higher harvest with deer and turkeys where people just had more time. They couldn't do anything else, so they were in the woods hunting. And the result of that was higher harvest. I'm going to kind of break down a few of the key points here with the CWD data. We've talked about this a lot. I know there's some interest from the public. So bear with me through this slide. So first of all, we're looking at long-term trends, right? We don't want to get caught in this, did harvest go up or down a little bit this year, that year? What's happening long-term? And it's pretty clear here in unit CWD, those 8 counties, harvest has been on a downward trend. Even before CWD was detected in that area, there was a slow march downwards. So one of the ways we also analyze this data, we try to normalize it for the number of successful hunters, and that's going to get at the underlying behavior of how hunters are harvesting deer. This is really important in unit CWD because after the discovery of CWD, the agency started kind of aggressive messaging with, this is real, you guys need to harvest more deer, we need to reduce density over there. We added additional opportunities almost every year. We incentivized harvest to get people out there and shooting more deer. And so when we compare what the underlying behavior of hunters was before and after the discovery of CWD and before all these additional opportunities and regulations were added over there, we can see before hunters were shooting just shy of 2 deer per hunter per year. And this is a pretty consistent number that most states see across the board. Hunters generally stay a little under 2 deer per hunter. Now, we wanted to figure out, is all this messaging, are all these regulations, are they changing hunter behavior? And when we break down, we normalize the data in the same way, we see not across a broad segment of hunters. Most hunters were still shooting generally that same number of deer. A lot of times you'll hear people talk about this as freezer capacity. Folks only have so much time and freezer space to go out, harvest deer, get to the processor. Their family's only going to eat so much venison a year. So there's kind of like, a cap on what the average hunter is going to harvest and take home to his family. And then to get at a few of these harvest pieces, we have had some hunters kind of, reach out and talk through us that we made a regulation change this past year, and we saw harvest decline in unit CWD. So there's a regulation change, about 500 less deer were harvested this year. Was that a result of the regulation change? Well, if you go look from 3 years ago to 2 years ago, there was no regulation change. and harvest decreased 1,500. So with 1 year of data, we can't make any definitive statements, right? We can't say, well, yes, because of this, this happened. Harvest is going to go up or down every single year. And that's kind of getting back to what I started off saying on this slide. We have to look at the long-term trends. And the long-term trend there is we're slowly seeing a decrease in harvest in that area. So in addition to that, hunting regulations and harvest are just one piece of CWD management. We are still doing a lot. Obviously, we're still taking CWD serious. It's going to be here for a really long time. We're always going to take it serious, but this is a long battle that we have. So I want to talk about some of the other CWD strategies that we have, and then I'm going to go into kind of a candid reminder of why we proposed these changes last year. So we do still have a lot of harvest incentives on the ground. These are all designed to get people to harvest more deer. We have an Earn a Buck program in every single CWD positive county. This allows for the unlimited take of bucks. For every doe that a hunter submits for sampling, they receive another buck tag. So there's no limit to that. Replacement buck is a statewide program. If a hunter anywhere harvests a positive buck, they receive another buck tag so that they can go out and harvest another one. And then, of course, our general 3 does per day antlerless regulation allows a lot of opportunity for hunters to target does and reduce density. After hunters get positive animals, we also have some incentives designed to keep them hunting. So the processing voucher, if a hunter submits an animal and it's positive, they will receive a $75 voucher so they can at least partially offset the cost of processing the next deer that they harvest. If a hunter harvests 2 positive animals, they'll actually receive a free annual sportsman license. So these are all designed to get hunters out there removing deer and removing positive deer. Service testing, I'll break down all the work that goes into this a little bit later, but we provide free testing for any hunter that wants to test a deer, as many deer as they want. We want them to know the status of that deer, whether it's positive or not, and to make sure they're comfortable consuming it. We also have a feeding and carcass transport zone. We call this our CWD management zone. This was put in place about 3 years ago by the commission to really reduce the burden on hunters, simplify the regulations about where they could and couldn't transport deer, and also to make feeding unavailable year-round in those areas so as not to spread the disease more. Targeted removal is an internal program that we have with USDA Wildlife Services, where we actually send out letters to landowners and get them to voluntarily participate in this program, where USDA will go out to sparks, which are just outlying detections in the leading edge of the disease, and work with these landowners to remove animals so we can test more animals around that recent detection, but also reduce the density and hopefully contain the spread of CWD in that area. We increased the invitations, the letters that we sent out to landowners this year substantially. We added 7 properties, which is good. We don't get a ton of participation. A lot of people are hesitant to let USDA come onto their land. So we also have a CWD landowner management permit where we allow the landowners to do this work themselves. We restructured that program a little this year to kind of clear up exactly what the guidelines were for landowners. And we've issued 55 permits to date for landowners to be able to remove deer after the deer season. So I'm going to rewind a little bit, and we're just going to get up on a balcony, and I want to talk about the strategy shift that the agency proposed last year and commission you ultimately approved. And a lot of this started with public input. We were doing the adaptive harvest management process. We had a meeting in each region. We were talking to our staff, and we really started hearing a lot of individuals did not like the agency's approach. And this wasn't just through the public input in the adaptive harvest management thing. This was also talking to Region 1 staff, our CWD staff. We were holding public meetings. One example I'll share is we held a public meeting in Lewis County, which last hunting season, this previous one, Lewis County had its first positive detection. So we went to Lewis County, held a public meeting. It was pretty well attended. There was probably 50 or 60 guys there. And it quickly became apparent that one of their main concerns with the discovery of CWD in their county was, are those CWD regulations coming here because we don't want them? There was a gentleman who was very animated about not wanting those regulations, and he was pretty disruptive. So we started getting this picture. People don't really like our messaging. They're not really happy with these regulations. At a broad scale, of course, there's individuals that do like these opportunities, and I don't want to dismiss that. And there's certainly hunters that are shooting more deer and taking this seriously. And so in combination with all that input, we started looking at the long-term harvest data. And of course, you all saw that. It's clear there's a decline. Harvest was higher when we had traditional seasons in those areas. So we also started talking to other states. We're talking to other states all the time. A lot of eastern whitetail states like Illinois and Wisconsin have had CWD for a really long time. And we started to ask them about their experiences. Had they seen similar things? And if you really look at the course of their regulations and their evolution of dealing with CWD, it follows a pretty similar course. And they kind of issued a warning for us. Like, you guys need to remember that hunters are your best ally in this. Hunters are the community that you guys are going to need to be working with for a very long time on this issue. And you need to respond to them and listen to them, because what can happen when you're pushing and pushing with this aggressive messaging and people aren't necessarily happy is you're going to take a step back. You're going to look at your harvest data and you're going to say, well, we didn't, the impact that we intended for all these regulations isn't really materializing. We're not necessarily in a better off situation harvest wise. Harvest is stagnated or maybe declined or maybe even increased a little bit. But more importantly, you may have alienated a lot of hunters and lost a lot of support and trust from the hunting community. And that, at the end of the day, is going to impact your CWD management even more than any incremental increase in harvest that you might have seen. So with that, the agency proposed this change last year. We truly believe that there's more value long-term in returning to normal regulations, maintaining and building trust with hunters. This is going to be a long battle. We need to work with them. We're all hunters. We're part of that community too. We need to work together to find some solutions that work. One of those is obviously investing in recruiting and retaining hunters. We know this is important not only from a CWD standpoint, but just from an agency standpoint. The funding model, we need people to keep hunting. They're funding conservation. And then lastly, we're continuing to do research. We're continuing to educate. Some of the research that's coming out of Wisconsin and Arkansas is very whitetail specific, which is something we haven't had a lot of before. There's some great communication pieces in there that we can share with hunters, work with hunters to develop new ideas. And so part of that, all the southeastern states, we met this past summer to talk about CWD management, and we're in the early process of developing this, but we need to create some consistent and clear messaging across the Southeast for all hunters. So it's not each state kind of, speaking slightly different about it. We're all coordinated in passing along the same message. So that's it for my past CWD stuff. I'm going to transition now just to our sampling season. And to kick that off, I want to highlight all the work that our CWD crew does, because this is a tremendous program. The fact that these guys are a bunch of wildlife biologists, and over the course of a year, they became extremely good logistic coordinators and set up this whole process that functions flawlessly is pretty impressive. So our CWD staff throughout the season, they're driving almost 4,000 miles every week, and this covers at least 15 weeks. They're stopping at over 50 different taxidermists and processors to pick up samples. As you'll see in a second, when they're going to taxidermists and they have bucks that are getting mounted, they'll actually do all the sampling there. They also go to 55 drop-off freezers. Like I said, they're talking to a bunch of hunters. They're getting filtered information through the processors and taxidermists from hunters as well. So they're getting a good broad input as they're doing this. We just got some pictures here to show, highlight the work they're doing. That's a CWD lab that was just completed in 2023. So it's gone through 2 sampling seasons now. We're thankful to the commission for that. It's a really cool lab. There's an incinerator on site, so we can properly dispose of all those carcasses. And here's just some pictures of all the, what one of these stops might look like, where they're picking up hundreds of heads. And that's just one day. On Monday, they go pick up hundreds of heads. The rest of the week, they're sitting in the lab and they're processing all those. So through this past sampling season, they were processing an average of about 900 samples collected, processed, and shipped each week. About half the season, they processed over 1,000 samples. And then, around the start of rifle season, they're working really long days. They're processing thousands of samples, shipping them off. And that's just the beginning of the work. Once they get shipped off, then staff are getting the results. They're disseminating those results. We're calling all positive detection, the hunters who all had positive detections, calling them, answering questions, seeing if we can help them at all, just making them aware of CWD and their management options there. So this whole program takes up probably 30 staff members, pretty much they're full time the entire deer season. It's a pretty big operation. So the test results from this past year, we sampled just shy of 15,000 deer. There were 753 positives. As always, most of those were in the core area of Fayette and Hardeman counties. You can see 86% of all statewide sample positives were in Fayette and Hardeman. So I wanted to walk you through some notable detections that we had this year. We put out a press release on this one. You probably all saw this. Carroll County had its first positive detection. It's just over the line from Madison and Henderson County, so not that far from other positives, not super unexpected. We're going to continue to see these local counties become positive here through time. Hardin County, we had a detection very close to the Wayne County line on the eastern side of Hardin County. And in the northern part of Gibson County, getting close to Obion, we had a positive detection. And we also had one other positive detection that we just found out about earlier this week, commissioners, that I want to make you aware of. Unfortunately, we had a positive detection at President's Island. So most of you are probably aware President's Island is a highly coveted quota hunt. We did have a positive detection there. We haven't even talked to the director's office about this yet. So we're going to gather some information, talk with our Region 1 staff, the director's office, and I think bring you more information and an update at the April meeting. So I'll wrap up here. This is just what the regulations will look like with no proposed changes next year. You can see the dates there. I think I'm going to move on to turkeys now. When we get to questions at the end, if we want to pull us back up, we can. So the rest of these species should go much quicker, just an FYI. So for turkeys, this is the same graph that we show every year, right? Total harvest. Turkeys, it doesn't fluctuate quite as much. We're generally in that 30 to 33,000 range. One thing I would like to point out on the slide is you can look at the bottom where we've got the bird bag limit changes. And as the bag limit's gone from 4 to 3 to 2, harvest has stayed about the same. So this can make it really hard to figure out what's going on with the population, right? If harvest isn't even fluctuated, it's staying in the same general area, but we're changing bag limits, what's going on? And one way we get at that, and this kind of gets into all the details of that adaptive harvest management stuff, is we're using effort. So we thought this was kind of a good way to highlight that and just talk about a cool piece of information. So we do a harvest and effort survey after every turkey season to try and get at the underlying effort that hunters put in to harvest those turkeys. And that can really help us kind of decipher what's going on with the population a little bit. So I'll point out 2022, that's that bar in the middle. You can see there, this is average number of days to harvest a turkey. So that year, it took considerably more effort. It took almost 2 days more of effort per hunter to go out and harvest a turkey. And that's telling us there's probably less turkeys on the landscape, right? And so we're starting to build these relationships with harvest, effort, and the population. Why did it take more effort that year? And so, for example, in 2020, if we go back to 2020 and we look at those poult per hen numbers, we see it was a fairly poor reproductive year in 2020. And so when you fast forward 2 years, there's not nearly as many 2-year-old birds on the landscape, and hunters had to work a little harder to achieve that same level of harvest. So that's just an example to highlight how we're using this harvest data or this effort data and how we kind of try and tie all these pieces together and understand the relationships with them so we can really learn about what hunting's role is in population dynamics. And so we're not recommending any changes to the turkey season either. You can see here, there's the units, and this is what the season would look like. An important note here is this is the spring 2026 season. So the 2025 season, which is going to occur in a couple weeks, that is what you all set last year. So this April, you'll set the season for the following year. Go through elk real quick. As always, the elk hunts were highly successful. There was 13 bulls taken. The youth hunter was successful, which is always great. Here's all those smiling faces, and you can see, commissioners, there's some really good bulls taken. We are conservative with our elk population because we're limited a little bit on habitat and how much it can grow. We're working on that. We put a lot of resources into that. But the result of that is very high quality bulls. So there's going to be one slight change in your red line packet that you get this year. Elk Hunt Zone 6 we've lost access to about 3,800 acres of right-of-way that we had an MOU with the energy company has been sold off. So that acreage will just need to be adjusted in the proclamation. I'll wrap up the big game proclamation with bear management. We had the highest harvest ever for bears this year. So you can see there 812. I suspect that probably is similar to deer, where less acorns on the ground resulted in bears just having to move around a little more, being more susceptible. I don't wonder if, grocery bills have gotten to people a little bit and they're looking for some more locally sourced protein, a little cheaper. You guys proposed 2 hunts last year, or we proposed 2 hunts last year that you all approved. And I just wanted to give you a harvest update on those. Bear Hunt Zone 4 had a 2-day gun hunt where dogs were allowed added. The harvest from that hunt was 11 bears. Only 2 of those were with dogs. And then Bear Hunt Zone 5, there was a 2-day gun hunt added there. No dogs allowed, and the harvest there was 2. Now, we are recommending one change to Bear Hunt Zone 2 this year, and this is simply going to be the shifting of days from December earlier into October. And the intention here is to move those days to when more bears are active, to hopefully capture a little higher harvest in those areas. And so if you look at the calendar here, this is where those days would be added in October. So we're just going to remove those last 9 days towards the end of December when a lot of bears are not as active and females are in dens, and move those earlier to try and increase success and increase the harvest a little in these counties. So I'm going to roll.
Mark?
Yes, sir.
I didn't play quarterback in high school, but I'm playing one today.
Okay.
I'm going to call an audible.
Yeah.
Why don't we take a quick break, and then we'll come back in 15 minutes for Q&A.
Okay.
And then
Yes,
we'll
sir.
go on to the next species. Okay. Thank you. Break for 15 Okay, we're going to bring this meeting back to order. So I'm going to revamp the guidelines here, what we're going to do. Mark is going to go through the end of, we're going to go through Waterfowl, and then we're going to take Q&A from the commissioners and then the public. And then we'll come back and finish up the rest of the preview. So Mark, I'll pass it back over to you.
All right. Thank you for your patience, commissioners. I'm going to run through ducks real quick, and then we'll go to questions, as the chairman just said. So, as always, most of this is just minor date changes to reflect the updated calendar. There are two changes we wanted to make you aware of. This is coming from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, so we're required to make these changes. One, the blue-winged teal population dipped below the threshold to have the 4 additional teal-only days in the September season. So this September, there will just be a 5-day wood duck and teal season. There's one bag limit change. Northern pintails are increasing to 3 per day. And then the rest of these all fall within federal frameworks as well. This is what the duck season will look like this upcoming year. This is kind of the normal format that we have every year. We have a 2-day season, phase 1, that starts the Saturday after Thanksgiving. That's November 29th and 30th this year. And then we'll go 58 days from December 5th to January 31st. You can see what the calendar looks like there. This does result in the youth and veteran hunts being a little different this year because January 31st is a Saturday. So you can see what that calendar looks like on the screen there. The first veteran hunt will occur the Sunday after the regular season ends. Then we'll have a break so that it should line up good for that first youth hunt. Just a quick recap of the Sandhill crane season. We had about 4,000 applicants. There was pretty good crane harvest this year. We finished compiling the numbers. There were 714 cranes harvested. Majority of those were adults, but still a good representation of juvenile birds, which is good. We're looking for that number to stay higher, signaling good reproduction. And the Sandhill crane population is doing well. This is the same Sandhill crane season that we have every year. We just do 60 days late and straight from December 3rd to January 31st. So that is it, commissioners. So at this point, we'll do questions for the big game proclamation and the migratory game bird proclamation.
So we'll start with commissioners. Do any of the commissioners have questions? Commissioner Box.
I know you're shocked to have questions, Mark. All right, I want to recap a few things that we talked about a year ago, really for the new folks. And when we voted on the chronic wasting disease change and put it with the rest of the state on deer season, it was a pretty close vote, as you recall, and lots of discussion. And I haven't had diagrams and charts, but I decided maybe that was overkill. So, but I thank you for sharing the map, and it kind of, when you said President's Island, it gave me a knot in my gut because it's kind of a crown jewel of Tennessee deer hunting. And so I think we all have to acknowledge that it's spreading, and we have to do the best we can with it, right?
Yes, sir.
And for the benefit of the new folks, there's no cure for the disease. And at least in Fayette and Hardeman counties, it's bad, really bad, like really, really bad. And the outlook for the deer herd in those counties, at least, is bleak. Would you agree?
Yes, based on all available evidence, those populations are getting to the prevalence levels where we are going to start seeing decreased survival and decreasing deer populations. They're certainly probably already there in portions of those counties.
So drawing on the experiences of places like Illinois and Colorado, we need to contain it, control it, slow it as much as we can, right?
Yes, sir.
A key part of slowing the spread is removing deer. And you talked about that, right?
Yes.
And I shared some info with you and Joe and others in the agency from things I had read and researched. And I just want to run through some of those things with you.
Okay.
Bucks are more likely to spread the disease than does, and that's because of their behavior and life patterns, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
And bucks that are 4 years old or older are more likely to have the disease.
Yes.
And bucks have a larger home range than does, which means they contact more deer, right?
Yeah.
And adult bucks travel long distances, and even young bucks, once they disperse from their mother, will travel far greater distance than when they're young, right?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. That first dispersal event when they're a yearling is can be pretty far as well.
And during the breeding season, bucks create scrapes and communication signposts that then other deer come and visit, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
And bucks urinate on the scrapes and they rub their faces on them. They lick the low-hanging branches, and all of that can spread the disease, right?
Yes, sir.
In deer breeding in Tennessee, and this is generally speaking, but it normally runs from late October through December. And the peak estrus period, which most does come in heat, is normally around mid-November, right?
Yeah. Mid to late November seems to be most conception dates.
And bucks travel far greater distance during that breeding season, which is known as the rut, compared to other times of the year because they're actively searching for mating opportunities, right?
Yeah, so their home range will generally expand. There's some of that new research that came out of Arkansas shows the range of CWD positive bucks is smaller than bucks that don't have it. So there maybe is a little inhibition if those bucks do have CWD with spreading out far and wide. So that's a small nuance.
You shared that in the former disease zone, where we're down about 500 deer last year as compared to the year before, right?
Yes, sir. Yeah.
And I think you also said that everywhere hunters generally kill 1.83 deer per year.
Yeah, I mean, it varies, but around that 1.8 level seems to be in West Tennessee where that number sits.
And most of those deer are taken with a traditional deer rifle, right?
Yes, sir.
So necessarily, if we had a season that allowed for harvesting deer with a rifle earlier when the rut first starts, there would be some bucks that would be taken earlier than they were this past year.
Yes, sir. Yeah, we did see that when we looked at the data that harvest was shifted a little bit a few weeks earlier, but in general, it was also distributed over a longer period of time. So you didn't see the peaks like the intense harvest pressure the first few days of rifle season. When rifle season started earlier and was in place of muzzleloader season, you kind of saw a longer trickle of harvest through time there.
So certainly there could have been a deer that was harvested, say, late November last year that would have otherwise been harvested a month earlier and not have potentially spread the disease, right?
Yes, sir.
I'm gonna totally shift gears now and talk about statewide. I got calls for the first time from deer processors, and they were very concerned. And actually, I experienced their concern myself. One of my boys killed a deer over Thanksgiving, and I think it was Saturday after Thanksgiving, and I got made a call to my favorite processor, and they had a voicemail and said, "We are closed, our freezer is full, or our fridge is full. We will not take any more deer." And I called 3 more places, ended up driving 2 hours. So I didn't have to process a deer myself that night. And the processors urged us to consider moving opening day away from Thanksgiving because they felt like the combination, people love to have a opening day and they love to hunt over Thanksgiving. And if we could somehow separate those two, it would give the processors a little more time to cut more deer and people wouldn't be turned away. So I just want to mention that for what it's worth.
Okay. No, when we were doing all that adaptive harvest management work last year and talking to the focus groups and hunters, we heard that same concern, and it's real. And I think it brings up an important point that keeping processors in business is an important piece for keeping people hunting too. You know, people need an outlet for their deer.
And I think I've shared that actually had a letter from one, but if you don't have it, let me know and I'll send it to you.
Yes, sir.
All right. That's all. Pass the witness.
Thank you. Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner Butt.
I got a reminder a week or so ago about possibility of allowing taking of raccoons year round. We had discussed this last year during season setting. We allow for training of dogs year round. So the objection that dogs would interfere with nesting of quail and turkey was moot when it comes to that. We allow trapping year round for raccoons and possums. So I would like to again suggest that we consider the allowing of taking of raccoons year round. I have talked to the trappers as well as hunters, and I think that small change wouldn't be much of effect except for those who were training the dogs so that they could take a raccoon during that time. So, what would be the procedure other than having that discussion now before we actually take the vote on changing in April?
So I think that all the finer details of that discussion are escaping me right now. We will prepare that and bring it in April. Bring all those details again. And I think ultimately at the end of the day, the discussion, there's a lot of raccoon season. It's pretty close to statewide already. And we'll have to get those details and get them to you, Commissioner. I cannot remember.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Davenport.
Thank you, Chairman. I'll just qualify my cross-examination that I'm an engineer, not an attorney. So, but I understand Commissioner Box's point. I think he did a good job making that point. I think that we've got really kind of two situations over in the CWD zone. We've got stopping the spread, and then we've got lack of hunter participation, and those two are intertwined. And I think what we're seeing is the disease has killed off a lot of the deer in Fayette and Hardeman County. Is that That's more or less what our harvest data shows. Is that correct?
I would be hesitant to use that language that it's killed off a lot of the deer. I think tangible impacts that we can really say we've seen are that it has probably impacted the age structure of bucks.
Okay.
There are still deer in Fayette and Hardeman County, but the older bucks, which is Commissioner Box pointed out, they tend to get it at higher rates. So one of the first impacts you'll see of CWD is that lowering of the age of deer.
I probably should have said older bucks because that's what most hunters want to kill. So I think you've got this core zone where the disease is just diminished the ability of a hunter to take a big buck. And I know trophy hunter is certainly not an endearing term to a lot of people, but given a 2.5-year-old doe or a 4.5-year-old buck, I'm shooting the buck every time. So the county surrounding that hot zone, I've received, some hunter input that expanding the weapon type and increasing the ability to kill, increasing the hunter's success by opening up longer seasons and I guess more efficient means of harvest has also diminished the age structure, which is maybe something that we want to do to control the disease. But I think that there's a possibility that we're losing a lot of hunters because they don't have the opportunity to take a trophy buck anymore. So we've got these areas outside of the core counties that we're actually defeating the purpose of stopping the disease by losing hunter interest because they're just, whacking their mature bucks at a much higher rate. Now that's the comment I've received. Do you have any thoughts on that, or have you received any input outside that 2-county zone?
We hear the same thing a lot. It's hard to tell what's going on with the data as far as specific age structures. We're still seeing a lot of older bucks get killed, but is that causing a decline in those age structures? I don't think we can say that yet. In pockets, it certainly is. But I think you bring up a good point of the complexity of this issue and weighing what a lot of hunters' primary goals are directly in contrast with CWD management. And that makes the decision that you all have to make extremely difficult, right? I do not envy you.
One last point, how do you all feel about us changing, the season one year to this and the next year to that? Do you receive some confusion from our hunters over that?
We regularly receive a comment, comments along the lines of please leave things alone.
Okay, thank you.
We'll go to Commissioner McCarty, and then if you don't mind, or we'll come back to y'all. Okay.
A couple questions for you. One is related to public comments, the CWD zone, the velvet and the the muzzleloader. How much comments were coming in after the change back to the regular last year?
So I don't have the number off the top of my head. We received quite a few phone calls. I know and talked to individuals at the beginning of the deer season when they finally realized that change had been made. And most of them, once we walked them through it, they were like, okay, there wasn't a lot of heartburn. We did get some comments where folks were interested in going back. But I wouldn't say it was overwhelming. And so another thing to weigh when you read this, hey, the public comment like we just sent out, which is just give us your thoughts, is there's generally a motivation bias with that, right? If a hunter's happy with things, he's not really motivated, so you're generally going to see people who want change and want to see a difference made respond to those. So it's not a true survey. It's not a representative sample. So just keep that in mind.
I would like to get some more data from you related to the change. And I know it's hard to tell from 1 year in the harvest of the mature bucks in the CWD zone, going back to the old regulations as far as that velvet hunt and the muzzleloader hunt. and think that that might be one of the easier ways to help increase those buck harvests.
Okay. Yeah, we'll dig into that age data and see what we can find out and present it in April.
One of the other things that, as Commissioner Box was saying, deer processing, I think statewide is more tricky than it used to be. And everybody did experience those problems over Thanksgiving with almost all the processors being full. One of the things that I experienced, a lot of us hunt on the state line with Mississippi, and having the issues of not being able to cross to either side. And if there's any
Yes, sir.
potential where you've got heavy CWD in Mississippi and heavy CWD in Tennessee, of having some agreements to be able to have a processor that could serve both of them. One of the issues I ran into last year is one of the most common processors in Fayette County. He didn't even stay open for youth season, that last youth weekend. He said it's not worth his time and his effort. Well, you've got right across the line in Mississippi that's still open. And if somebody was able to take deer from either a couple of counties, maybe it would help.
Yes, sir. We'll guess get together and talk to some folks in Mississippi, see if there's any potential there.
That's it. Thank you.
Was it Commissioner Little and Baloo? Okay, you want me to start? Commissioner Little. Mark, you did a nice job working through all the information and you made it interesting. So thanks for doing that. I have a question about the chart for turkey hunter effort from 2020 to 2024. Without having to get too deep in the weeds, can you tell us how you come up with that information? Is it survey? How do you do that?
Yes. So we do a postseason harvest and effort survey. So we send out almost 30,000 surveys and they're one page, fairly simple to hunters that just asks, how many days did you hunt? How many turkeys did you harvest? Where were you when you did it? That's the nuts and bolts of it. And so then to get that number, we're just looking. And I think, so we ask them how many days, how many hours on average did you hunt per day, just to get that breakdown of effort. And then we take the total harvest and that effort and kind of normalize it.
How many responses do you typically get to that number of
I believe it's
surveys?
around 10,000. It's pretty good. Yeah, I'd have to look at the exact numbers, but it's good. We send it out. We send it out via an email. They don't respond to that, we'll actually send them a letter. This is one of the most important pieces of data that we collect. So we stay after to try and get responses. So our confidence intervals are pretty tight.
I remember last year, one of the big discussions we had, I think it was in Johnson City, was about the start of the turkey season. And I know we get surveys back, we get emails from people. Well, I am getting, like other commissioners, phone calls, and I get approached, and I've had 4 or 5 different regular turkey hunters that have been turkey hunting quite a long time from different counties, in fact, just in crossing paths where they call me, and they uniformly have said, we don't like moving the turkey season back the week. And I try to explain to them, the science that you all shared with us last year. I think between now and our next meeting, I'd like us to look at that again. I think if my experience and reports I get, and I know this is just glimpses, but a lot of people I know, from my secretary to me to friends, are saying we're seeing a lot more turkeys out and about now. And I think one of the reasons why last year, at least, I voted in favor of adjusting the season, or the season selection, was everybody wants to make sure that we have an abundance of wildlife. And I'd like between now and our next meeting, maybe we could talk, or maybe you'd be prepared at the next meeting to say, if you can, what impact do you think that is having on the population? Because I know from a personal standpoint, I was looking at the dates, and I was talking to Mr. Benedict earlier. It wouldn't bother me at all to move the juvenile hunt back to the last weekend of March, in open season for regular hunters the first weekend of April, looking at the dates next season, at least discuss that possibility. And it may be that you have science that shows that that's not in the best interest of the turkey population. Certainly would respect that. But given that I've had a number of people ask me about that, it's something I'd like to look at and at least us have a discussion about.
Yes, sir. I think we can put together a couple just high level slides about all the considerations around start date, and we'll bring that back in April.
Thank you. Commissioner Baloo.
Hey, thank you, Chairman. Only thing I've got is I received an abundant calls on last year. We had a doe only season at the end of the year. We took that away. I've had a lot of calls that would love to have that back. A 3-day, 5-day hunt, something on the end of the season. It's doe only. It's in Unit 1 only, unit formerly Unit L. You can kill 3 does a day from the end of September to the end of 1st of January. I understand that, but they say they like the doe only hunt. You can't hunt bucks or not trophy hunting anymore. Doesn't cost the agency anything to do it. I think our sportsmen want it in Unit 1 that I've talked to, which have been a large amount. And we issue depredation permits in that same unit 3 or 4 months later to keep farmers from having crop damage, abnormally amount of crop damage. So I think it would be a good idea for us to bring that doe only end of the year season back, 3-day, 5-day, a Friday, Saturday hunt, maybe something like that. That would increase our harvest. One, help maybe not as many deer be harvested during the depredation season, June, July. And I think that would help, the total number of doe harvest, not buck, but I would like to see that brought back. That's all I got.
Yes, sir. We'll look into that. A couple of comments real quick. One of the reasons we went away from that change is we heard when we were getting all this comment, folks wanted seasons to begin and end across the state at the same time. We had different units had gotten where they had special little seasons afterwards. They were ending at different times, and folks just wanted a little reduced complexity. That season in particular, when we talked to a lot of hunters about it, they were all like, we like it in theory, but they felt like it actually a lot of times caused them to leave does on the table, where they were like, well, I'm buck hunting. I'm not going to shoot any does. I'm not going to shoot any antlerless deer. I'm going to shoot those during the private land antlerless only season. And then, of course, you're coming out of the holidays. It's early January. Kids are going back to school, and folks just couldn't, find the time to get back out there and harvest those does. So just a little background of why we made that change.
Yeah. I think this just gives another opportunity for hunters to get out in the woods. If you can go harvest the deer. If you don't, and it's a lot of difference between hunting deer in Johnson City and Memphis. The population in Unit 1 is abundant. I don't know how many deer we're going to harvest this year during depredation season to prevent crop damage, but it's going to be a lot. And I understand that portion of it, but whatever we can take during a regular season and can be used to put in somebody's freezer in Unit 1, I think it's a good move. And it just gives the opportunity, like I said, for sportsmen, another opportunity to get out there. So.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? I have a quick question, Mark.
Yes, sir.
So, and maybe you said this in your comments, but in Lewis County, that was a healthy number of people that attended that event, from what I understand.
It was a good public meeting. There's 50 plus individuals. Yeah.
So what were the general comments, just in synopsis? I know that. Could you dig in just a little bit on that?
Yeah. So, those
quickly, I know we're trying to move them.
Yeah. So in general, at those meetings where a county has become positive, we give a short presentation about here's what CWD is, here's kind of the general management philosophy and all that. And at that point, we had mentioned one of the strategies is having, more liberal regulations, added rifle opportunity and all this. And it was clear the consensus in that room was we do not want that. Everyone felt like that was excessive. We've got one positive detection. We don't want to just, start wholesale harvesting deer indiscriminately. And there was some back and forth with that's not what we're saying. We're just talking about reducing density. And but it was clear that their anxiety, what they immediately pointed to was we do not want those regulations that are over there. So not only concerning those 8 counties, but surrounding counties as they become positive. I think there's some concern about what's occurring in those counties.
Thank you. So we'll go to the public. Any members of the public like to make if you just come to anybody that wants to make a comment could come to the mic. It's set up here up front. And if you could just state your name and where you live, and you have 3 minutes, and you might have some questions, but if you just go ahead and state your name, sir.
My name is Fred Walker. I'm from Maryville, Tennessee. I'm one of the original or the board of directors of Cora in Campbell County. I actually 5 years ago got to purchase a house in the middle of North Cumberland Wildlife Management Area. So I spend a lot of time up there. I have a proposal. I'm not a public speaker, so that goes in line, I think, with everything that everybody's talking about, and that's why I wanted to drive over here. And let me try to get to it quickly. I get 1% of what I want to say out. I want a long rifle flintlock season for the remaining 3 weeks of January. I think this will be very beneficial to everything that everybody has talked about. I think it will bring people in from all over the country. Pennsylvania is the only other state that I know of that has a specific flintlock season. I kind of got into the flintlocks about 1.5 years ago, thinking, well, I've been a muzzleloader man my whole hunting life. But I said, well, I'd kind of like to try a flintlock or see about it. It was very difficult for me to find one. It took me over a week on the internet to even find where I might have a chance of going and buying one. And then when I got to the, seminars or whatever you want to call them, or shows, there is a very, obviously I ended up joining the National Muzzleloader Association, the Contemporary Long Rifle Association. These people need a place to actually go hunt instead of just shooting paper targets. And what I'm asking for is for it to be no hunter orange required. And when I brought this up at a quorum meeting to Keith Thomas, my North Cumberland manager, he said, you mean you want to go out and dress like Daniel Boone or whatever else and go hunt? And I said, yes. I mean, that is what they do all over the country. There are rendezvous all over the country. Pennsylvania probably has 20 representatives for the National Muzzleloader Association. Tennessee has 1. You will bring these flintlock hunters to Tennessee, you will get the out-of-state money for the flintlock season. Just hunting is not what's in my mind, though. This is what I think should happen. The Tennessee the Tennessee Department of Tourism, if you open up this season, should promote it. You'll bring people in from all over the country to bring in. You can have the rendezvous or whatever you want to call them here for the tourist, which they have many of them all over the nation, very few here in Tennessee. This is the home of Davy Crockett, who lived in East Tennessee, Middle Tennessee, and West Tennessee. Tennessee is missing the boat in trying to promote this. I mean, when I got into it just to try to learn about flintlocks that I didn't know, it brought me back to Tennessee's history. And what all this gun actually did for the United States of America.
Yes, sir.
It is unbelievable.
Thank you.
Just me getting into it got my 6-year-old grandson into it, to where we would watch the History Channel about history, and his mom tried to get him to watch cartoons, and he said, but Mom, I like the History Channel. I think you're missing the education for the state of Tennessee. I think you need the tourism, promotion, but you all hold the key.
Yes, sir.
To getting this kicked off and started. And it just depends on whether you want to turn on this engine or not. I think it would be absolutely fantastic for the state of Tennessee.
Thank you. Thank you. Does anybody have any questions? Yeah, Commissioner.
I think that's a nice idea. I've heard in a while. I think it's pretty cool. I like it, but
Are you going to wear a Davy Crockett?
I don't know. I don't know. You may have to throw some leather on it, but maybe. But the only thing I might suggest, don't get mad at me, but if we're going to do that, throw archery in there with it as well, and give those men and women opportunity to archery hunt, maybe a little bit more if we're looking to getting people out of the field. But I love the flintlock idea. I think it's a great idea. Thanks for coming here.
Does anybody else have a question or comment?
I'd like to ask a question. Do you know how many hunters there are in Pennsylvania doing this?
I do not. I have not really done research. I think they only have like 1 week of strictly flintlock season.
Just a quick Google says there's an estimated 77,000 that participated in it. Is that?
I think it would help everything that everybody has talked about today.
It says it's one of the hottest seasons up there. You find that?
I would think so. I've only been into it for a year and a half. I think you're missing the boat.
Anyone else?
I'd buy one. I'd go with you. Yeah, if you wear the hat.
Commissioner Buck.
I'm interested in I ask why you think North Cumberland would be the location for that.
Well, I think you should do it for the whole state of Tennessee. Now, if it's only North Cumberland, hey, it tickles me to death. I'm right in the middle of it. But if you want CWD, if you want more hunters killing more animals in CWD, flintlock. You'll bring them in from out of state.
Okay. Well, Mr. Walker, it's Mr. Walker.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you for coming up and making this long trip, and it's very informative. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do we have anyone else to make a comment? If you just state your name and where you live.
Okay. Bill Kelly. I'm in West Tennessee, right there in Tipton County. Couple things I'd like to talk about. One, I can't ever get this many people together without talking about a few hogs. Right there in the Tipton Shelby line, we have a terrible wild hog population. Most people don't know it. Most people don't know anything about it. A few facts there. A few years ago, when we had a USDA helicopter come down, they killed 1,400 in 3 days. 1,400 hogs, 3 days. I'd hate to have been the man on the shotgun shooting all those hogs. He was hurting. He looked like he'd been in a bar fight. What we haven't had since probably, I'm going to say 15, is a helicopter come in and kill 1,400 hogs in 3 days. The population, just like anything else, rises and lowers, is what it is. USDA has been funding us a bird with a crew. Comes down. They have to fly so much area in a short amount of time. They book the bird a year out in advance. What helps is when there's a high river, Mississippi River being up, and a cloudy day where they can see what they're shooting at, it makes for a good kill. It's detrimental to us as a farmer. I forgot to mention that. I'm a full-time row crop farmer. And if we can't get some help, I don't know about what the administration is going to do with USDA funding, but if there is any money that we can allow for some helicopter time in that Shelby Forest bottom, you've got Eagle Lake, you've got Shelby Forest. I'm hearing good things about, they brought in LBL. Supposedly we're bringing, I was talking to one guy, we're bringing in a bird of LBL and we're going to kill him. I talked to a guy at the NWTF. Yeah, we killed 4. You know, that's not moving any weight. So anyways, hogs. Whitetail is why I got up early this morning and drove up here. And I'd like to talk a little bit about the CWD season as we know it there in Tipton County and the issues that we're having. I feel like when we started this CWD thing, we didn't exactly know what to do, but we knew we had to make a plan. We had to do something. I get that. But what we did was wrong. there was a man that come down here and told us, so what's going to happen if we start the CWD season? He said, well, two things are going to happen. You're going to kill your age structure out, and you're going to make hunters absolutely lose interest in the sport. I looked at your chart, beautiful chart, Mr. Mark, that decline in hunting. We're sitting here talking about incentivizing and bringing stuff to make people get out there and kill more deer. Mr. Box there brought up President's Island. We farmed President's Island there in the 90s before we started opening up deer hunting down there. There was no hunting. I've seen what West Tennessee deer can do with time and age and being left alone. A couple things here. 60% there in the lower Hatchie where I'm at, 60% of the deer were killed in rifle season in 7 days. 12% of the deer were killed before that. 28% were killed after that. 7 days, we knocked out 60% of the deer. You're talking about the processors and everything being full, slammed. We don't need, even when we took the season from September to January, we're knocking down 1.8 deer per hunter. Well, you give us this much or you give us this much. We're still only killing 1.8 deer. Overall, with the herd health is gone. Now, if we're still killing 1.8 deer, we have hunting declining. What's out there that we're killing? It's not your mature bucks. I can't talk about bighorns because that's in God's hands. But mature deer is what we're after. If CWD kills these animals at 6, 7 years of age, us waylaying these 2.5 and 3-year-old deer, we don't have to worry about CWD because we're never going to do it. With the CWD in Tipton County there, and I get it, I think we've got an issue there where the red dots are. That's another decision to be made. But we're painting the rest of Tipton County, and to help y'all understand where we are, the Mississippi River, Tipton County, that's where I'm at. I am on the far west side there. We're painting with too broad of a brush with what to do there. So no matter what we do with seasons, do not bring CWD back. It is no good. It has ruined the age structure, and it has ruined the hunting, causing less desirable hunting for everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hold on. Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Kelly? Any questions?
Covered it that well.
Thank you. Yeah, that was really good. Thank you. Yes, sir.
My name is William Flanagan. I'm also from West Tennessee. I'm whitetail enthusiast. I've hunted several different states, and I have seen the trend, the chart you had from 12 to now with the CWD, and also I see in that trend that our hunting season went from a gap from when you had a 1st of November, you went to muzzleloader for a week, went back to bow, went to rifle for 2 weeks, and then went back to muzzleloader, and then went back to bow. So your rifle season, I feel like in our area, we're 5 to 6 week rifle season. I feel like that's way too long to have. That's what's the problem with, like he was talking about, our age structure. We're killing out our 2.5-year-old deer, 1.5, 2.5, 3.5-year-old deer. We're not seeing the 4.5, 5.5, the mature deer that I've seen in other states. The way with their seasons go, they don't have a rifle season during their a rifle or a shotgun season during their rut when all the deer are moving more and susceptible of getting harvested. But I would like to see our seasons go back to what it was, the traditional way of when I was growing up with it. I'd like to see our muzzleloader season come back for the week, go back to bow, and go back to the rifle for 2-3 weeks, and then go back that way. I feel like your trend there with the harvest numbers was going declining. Not only the CWD, but we're also killing them out quicker than the CWD is killing them out. So that's all I got. I just wanted to touch on that. I would like to see our seasons go back the way it was, shortened season.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yep.
Do anybody have a comment or a question? What county do you live in?
I live in Tipton County.
Okay. Thank you.
Yes.
Does anyone else have a comment? Okay. Mark?
All right. Thank you, commissioners. With that, I'll ask Wally Akins, the other assistant chief, to come up for the WMA proc.
Thank you, Commissioners. Chairman Davenport. My name is Wally Akins. I'm Assistant Chief of the Habitat Section for Wildlife Division. And I want to talk about our WMAs and public hunting area and refuge hunting season proclamation. I introduced 2 new hunting areas across the state that we've acquired and will offer some hunting opportunity. One in Van Buren and White County, the other in Fayette County. And then move into some statewide and also some individual WMA regulations. And to make y'all aware, these are recommendations for the 2025 hunting season and then the 2026 turkey season. There's a lot of detail I'm going to provide, but for the most part, they're trying to reduce complexity and increase our consistency amongst our regulations, but also address some safety issues that we have in certain places. So first public hunting area, the Wolf River State Forest. It's a new area that Tennessee Division of Forestry has acquired, and they want to allow some opportunity for hunting. It's around 5,500 acres in Fayette County. And if you're aware of this property, it is part of the Ames Plantation. Being so close to Wolf River WMA, the regulations, we want to recommend aligning with that WMA at Wolf River, where big game, small game, and trapping seasons are same as statewide, with a few exceptions. No quail hunting. Rabbit season ends a little sooner, January 31st, and dog training is September 1 to January 31st. The young sportsman's turkey season will be same as statewide, but offer 2 quota hunts each week with a 1,500 quota throughout the season, each week of the season, 1 male turkey per hunt, and no fall turkey season. The spring season, turkey season, will be similar to other state parks and state forest in that area, Natchez Trace and Chickasaw namely, as well as Wolf River. The other area is the Scotts Gulf Centennial State Park. It's owned by TDEC, 6,500 acres in White and Van Buren County, just bordering Bridgestone Firestone WMA. Again, regulations align with the WMA closest to it. They border in this case. So they would want to recommend aligning with Bridgestone Firestone with a couple of different partner request changes. One is no dog training. Another is a 100-foot safety zone around the hiking trails and also the public access points. There's several viewing areas. Welch Point is one. It's a very popular site for the public to go to. And then also through their system, require camping to be reserved by reservation and in designated areas only. Tennessee Code Annotated Section 70-4-124 is likely to be amended this legislative session to allow fluorescent pink to meet the hunter orange requirement, which is a state law. And so to comply with that state law and to also mirror that language in our proclamation, we want to add the words or fluorescent pink anywhere that hunter orange is mentioned. This will only affect 2 proclamations. One, the big game proclamation that you heard Mark talk about, and then our WMA proclamation that I'm speaking of now. Also related to orange, our small game hunters on our WMA, we want to recommend for them to wear an article of fluorescent orange or pink clothing when big game seasons are going on. So if you're squirrel hunting on a WMA that's also muzzleloader or gun hunting, that hunter would be required to wear an article of orange clothing, except for, of course, for waterfowl, raccoon, and possum hunters. Also, our big game hunters hunting from a blind on a WMA want to display an article of cloth, fluorescent pink or orange outside of that blind within 25 feet, excuse me, of the blind and visible from all sides. So again, trying to increase safety awareness for hunters. This does not exclude the hunters from wearing 500 square inches of orange when they are required to do so. We've got a safety issue at Gin Creek. Some of you may already be aware of that. It's become a very popular hunting site for duck season. We've got an influx of ducks there, especially in December. The last 3 years, we've averaged between 20 and 40,000 ducks on our waterfowl counts there. But we also have 6 tier sites there that also allow some boat in and temporary hunting access. The last few years, we've had extreme overcapacity of hunters. A lot of vehicles in a third of an acre ramp. I think 70 vehicles parked in this boat ramp. A lot of complaints from hunters, a lot of interference with some registered blind holders. We've had numerous complaints of getting rained on by shot. And we've had one hunter that was shot in the eye this last year, as well as a letter submitted in complaint regarding this area. So to try to address some of these issues at Gin Creek, we want to offer no temporary hunting during the first 2 days of each segment of the lake waterfowl season. Only allow hunting there from the tier sites during those 2 days of each segment, first 2 days. This recommendation does not apply to our youth and veteran hunts, however. Also in Region 1, the Pagoda and John Tully, the youth dove hunt would only open on Saturday or Labor Day each year of the opening season, and not on Sundays if the opening day falls on Sunday. We've had some complaints and some conflicts there over the last few years. At Manaswamp Refuge, it's really just an adjustment there. Both Weekly and Gibson County are CWD positive, so we want to add the August deer hunt to the Weekly County section of Manaswamp. And at White Oak, the dog training season currently it's year round. We want to restrict that a little bit more to help protect some ground nesting birds there from September 15th to March 1st. At South Fork Refuge, it's a very similar refuge, managed very similar to Horns Bluff, and there's some slight differences in the hunting season regulations with these 2 WMAs or refuges. So we want to try to align those more closely. The closure date is previously closed 5 days before the late duck season at South Fork, and we want to expand that closure from November 15th to February 15th, and no hunting no longer allowed on the first and last day of each segment of the late season, if that falls on the weekday, which means hunting was only allowed on Saturday and Sunday, waterfowl hunting. Also, goose season would be allowed after the youth and military hunts following the statewide framework. Moving to Region 2, a few changes here. Clarify at ADC, the small game hunting is closed the night before big game quota hunts. At Cheatham, we clear up some verbiage there to ensure that archery is closed during the October Young Sportsman's Hunt. During certain calendar years, there's an overlap. Just the way that verbiage is presented. At Cheatham Lake, we've got some disturbance during the non-hunting waterfowl days, so want to prohibit all activities in those impoundments during those non-hunting days. And at Happy Hollow, allow archery hunting to occur during the statewide archery, muzzleloader, and gun seasons, except during the gun quota hunts in December. Finally, at Williamsport, move our quota hunts 1 week later to coincide with the statewide gun opener. Here, in this case, trying to simplify these regulations and eliminate some confusion for our sportsmen. Moving to Region 3, want to slightly change the antlerless bag limit there to follow the Unit 4 regulations, which means that would allow 4 antlerless deer during the archery season, 2 during the muzzleloader, and 2 during the gun season, and also close the dog training season during the months of December and January when our quail quota hunts are going on. At Catoosa, align our spring turkey season with the opening of the statewide turkey season and remain open for 4 weeks. The youth sportsman would be the same as statewide as well there. Also at Fall Creek Falls State Park, we have an archery hunt. We traditionally for years there, it's been 4 3-day hunts. And at partners' request, they want to have a little bit experience for hunters and have a 9-day archery quota hunt there at the park with a 70 hunter quota, and then offer a 3-day non-quota hunt after that for folks to come hunt. At Odie Mills Refuge, which is a unit of North Cumberland WMA, we've acquired more property up there this last year. So we want to increase our hunter quota from 4 to 15 hunters on the archery hunts. And then also establish a 15 hunter quota young sportsman archery hunt as well on that property. So that's all I have for the WMAs. I want to remind folks that we have a public comment period that starts today and goes until April the 16th. There's different ways you can provide comment. One is to go to our website, tnwildlife.org, and look for the public notice icon at the bottom of the page. Or our other way is twra.huntingcomments@tn.gov, which is an email, of course, that folks can send their comments to, and we welcome all those to do so. So if you look at our TWRA wildlife.org page, our public notice icon is at the bottom of that. That's what it looks like if you go to that page. So feel free to do that. So with that, I'll take any questions on WMAs.
Commissioners, any questions? Commissioner Butt.
Yes, sir. I would like to ask the procedure for consideration for declassifying some of the smaller WMAs. Like I have one in my area out New 50 before you get to the interstate, which is about 750 acres. It's 40 miles from the nearest Yanali where our base is, and it takes 3 to 4 days to drive out there and attend that. So what would be the procedure for doing that? Is that just policy within the agency, or would it take proclamation or?
So I'm not really following your question. Is it whether to designate it as a public hunting area or?
Well, yeah, we'd like to designate it as a public hunting area versus WMA.
So I think, council, would that require a proclamation change?
Depending on the exact circumstance, most likely, by statute, the commission groups properties as either a wildlife management area, public hunting area, or state fishing area. Those are really the three big buckets that the commission has to use. And the biggest distinction is a wildlife management area is intensively managed for habitat, whereas a public hunting area doesn't necessarily have that intensive management.
So what would be the policy there? What would need to be done?
I would probably need to look to see whether it's proclaimed as anything separately, and we would have to probably figure that out.
If we could look into that, that would be great. And there may be other areas across the state where it might be consideration as well. We've discussed this for the last 2 or 3 years as far as consideration for designation of PHAs versus what's required for WMA maintenance.
Right. And look at our WMAs, we have over 137 hunting areas. Now, 125 of those are WMAs, 12 are public hunting areas. Off the top of my head, there's 92 that are open, same as statewide. However, some of those have some caveats, say closed during the waterfowl season, for example. So there's a large number that are already open, same as statewide. And many of those satellite WMAs that you're talking about and public hunting areas are the ones that are more likely to be open, same as statewide. We have minimal management opportunity there, so we just leave that open, same as the statewide season in most cases.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you. Thank you. Yes, sir.
So, thank you.
Appreciate that. We'll now go to the financial report from Ken Tarkington.
Now for the really fun stuff. New commissioners, my name is Ken Tarkington. I'm the budget chief. And traditionally, there's a financial report given to the during the commission meeting. If you have any questions, please feel free to ask. The first slide is the representation and the health of the boating fund. For this year's budget, thus far through January of 2025, we're approximately $78,000 ahead of the estimated income, and we're at approximately 35% of the budget expenditure for the year. The next slide identifies the wildlife fund, and we're a little over 3.9 million ahead of the license sales projection for the fiscal year, while we spent approximately 38% of the annual allotment. The next slide is the wetlands fund, wetlands acquisition fund, and we have almost 24,500,000 balance in it. The last slide I have identifies the balances in all of the funds, including the two endowments, the Lifetime and the Watchable Wildlife Fund, and the current SPIF rate, and the SPIF is the State Pool Investment Fund rate. That's like a, lack of a better term, a CD, where the idle excess funds are invested by the state treasurer, is currently at 4.42%. Any questions, comments?
Any questions from commissioners?
Again, as I stated at our last meeting, I appreciate the efforts that went into the budget consideration and the outstanding job you did as far as projecting revenue and falling within the categories that you did. Outstanding job. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you, Chief Tarkington. Yes. All right. We'll now go to Frank Fiss.
All right. Thank you, Chairman. Today I'm going to ask the commission to approve some budget expansion proposals. And what these are is we'll occasionally come throughout the year and ask to have our budget increase. So in other words, our spending authority increase to do specific projects that come up. So I'll start with FY25. We've got 3 projects. The neat thing about the first 2 of these is they are totally funded from outside sources. So we're not hitting into our current funds that Ken was just talking about. We're going to be able to spend to get these projects done, and we'll be 100% reimbursed for this shooting range marketing plan from the Association of Conservation Information. And we've got GSM Outdoors sponsoring our Wildcast. So it's a great job by our Public Relations Committee to get some funding from outside to do our work better. The last project on here for FY25, we need a new roof on a large storage unit by our Region 3 office, and that's a $50,000 job. That is an eligible expense from our wetland fund, so we would go there to get that. That's for FY25. For FY26, we've got 5 projects here. First one is more sponsorship for the Wildcast podcast. These $25,000 will come from the Spear Foundation grant. The next 3 are from our wild diversity. We might rebrand that, our biodiversity division. And the first one is working with a fellowship at UT Knoxville, where they're going to do some work on the mussel fauna at Abrams Creek. They're bringing in $12,000 for that. That ultimately they'll have a contract with Auburn where a lot of genetics works get done. The next 2 items are large, totaling $1 million. This is to develop a habitat conservation plan on the Duck River. These dollars are coming in from the federal government through the Endangered Species Program, and that's how we'll be reimbursed at 100% for these projects. And the last project is like fish habitat for Kentucky Lake, where they'll be doing artificial structures, making reefs and spawning areas for bass. This is a program through the National Habitat, National Fish Habitat Partnership. The reservoir part of it has a Beyond Pond nonprofit, so to speak, that funds these things. So the fisheries crew in Region 1 will go out, do this project, and they'll be able to get full reimbursement at $57,000 a year for 3 years to do that project. So at this time, I would ask for approval of these budget expansions for FY25 and 26.
Okay. Do we have a motion to pass the budget request?
So moved.
Is there a second? Second. All right. Is there discussion? Any questions?
I had one question, Deputy. Region 3, the storage, is that in Morristown?
No, that's the one in the Crossville office.
I meant Crossville.
Yeah,
I'm
that
sorry.
long, there's several garage bays and an inside unit. It's been, that roof is well beyond its service life. The cost of repair is starting to add up, and they want to get ahead of the problem.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, I guess we'll go to a vote. All those in favor of the budget request, say aye. Aye. All those opposed? Ayes have it. Budget request granted. Okay, I think we're nearing the end of our meeting. Does anyone have any comments? Any commissioners? Members of the public? Anything else? Before we go, I just want to thank the staff again for a great few days we've had. Before I go, I want to get that biscuit recipe. I can't probably replicate it, but it was really good. And Mr. Director, I think we'll adjourn. All right. Meeting adjourned.